mail attachment something. So I don't know. My email's been kind of strange lately. But hi everyone. It's so nice to meet you. Thanks so much for being here.
Nice to meet you too.
Thanks for having us.
Yes. Before we start, can I just get a screenshot of us smiling? I've been trying to get some of these and I've forgotten in the past few interviews, and it's trying to find a space in the video where like no one's making a weird face.
Where we're like,
do you guys have copies of the book that you could hold up?
Yeah.
Yay.
Okay, that'd be awesome.
Perfect.
We came prepared.
Yay.
It won't be backwards.
It's not backwards for us. It looks perfect.
Yeah, because yours looks right and mine looks wrong.
Yeah, no, you're both right. So that's great.
Yeah.
Okay, ready? Okay, 1, 2, 3. All right, let's just take a look.
Okay.
We're all
and
smiling.
Also,
perfect.
I think your names are pretty simple, but just say your names in case we need
we want to make sure we pronounce them
We want to
correctly.
make sure that they're pronounced correctly. So Susanna.
Susanna.
Is it Leonard or Leonard?
Leonard.
Leonard. Okay.
Oh,
Okay.
see, I thought I was wrong on that.
See, I asked because Kirsty, when you said her name before, I'm like, I would pronounce it Leonard, but so okay, Leonard. And then it's Betsy Snyder?
Betsy Snyder. Yeah.
Okay. Nice and
Betsy
simple.
Snyder. Okay.
Fantastic.
Perfect.
Wonderful. All right. Are we ready to jump in? Get going? We love Alphabedtime.
Thank you.
Oh my goodness. It's adorable. It's absolutely adorable. Susanna, let's start with you. We love this fresh take on an alphabet story, and we know kids are going to love it too. Can you share with us how you got the idea for this story?
Well, it's kind of funny actually, because most of my ideas come from when I was a child. I grew up with 3 siblings. I have 5 children of my own. I now have 3 granddaughters. So most of my ideas come from my own experience, myself with them, connected with other things, experiences, situations, emotions. But like probably everybody, I keep lists of ideas. You know, I do when I do Tara Lazar's Story Storm, and just whenever I think of things, I write them down. But every once in a while, I sit down for writing time and nothing appeals to me, and I can't think of anything to write. And that's what happened with this book. I sat down to write one morning. It was January of 2010. That's when I wrote this.
Wow.
And I couldn't think of anything I wanted to write. So I did one of the things that I tell my students to do, which is if you're stuck, maybe try starting with a format of some kind. So I thought, well, I think I want to write an alphabet book. So that was where I started. And then I thought, well, there's a lot of good ones that are out there already. So I've got to come up with something that hasn't been done. And I fooled around with it for a while, had a lot of very bad ideas and things that I really wasn't happy with. And then I was just like saying the word to myself over and over. I had written it down a few times just so I could feel like I was writing something. And I wrote alphabet, alphabet, alphabet. And when I said it like that, it started to sound like alphabet. And that made me think of bedtime. And then I thought Alphabedtime. So I actually got the title first.
And it's such a clever title. I love it so much.
I'm so glad you like it. But then from there, I thought, okay, well, now I'm writing a bedtime story about putting the alphabet to bed. And, you know, I only have 5 kids, but 26 is a whole other, you know, league. So
Yes.
I thought, you know, I wanted it to be fun. I wanted it to be lively. I felt that I wanted to write it in rhyme. And I wanted, you know, each of the characters to have their own personality. And so when I wrote the original story, I had a lot of other qualifiers in, like it didn't just start out with ABC. The initial version had descriptors like Acrobat A and Clown Around C. I had a bunch of different things, different versions, and it was too long and it had too much stuff in it. And I think as writers, one of the things that we sometimes do is if we don't illustrate, we have to, we picture it in our minds and we have to use our words to show those things. So once you have an artist to bring that to life, you don't need all of those words. And it actually is restrictive sometimes to the illustrator. I think Betsy can correct me if I'm wrong, but if you put in too much information, then you kind of narrow what they're able to do. So in the end, I cut a lot of that stuff out. There's a few of them like Impish Eye and Jazzy J, which Jazzy was not my first idea. It was Jumping Jack J.
That's
So,
cute too.
you know, yeah, but it all evolves. But
Mhm.
anyway, I think I'm getting into another question. So did I
That's
answer the
okay.
question you asked?
No, we're just
Thank you.
listening. It's
No.
brilliant. It's brilliant. I think it's hilarious going back to what you said about how you said, I only have 5. I only have 5 kids to put to bed. And I'm thinking, well, that's perspective for you because I only have 2 and I can't imagine 5. So
Well,
yeah.
Kirsty has 5 too. She's
She
done
does.
this also. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Oh, so we just love this story and we love your illustrations, Betsy. What made you want to say yes to working on this project?
Well, it was definitely when my agent brought me the manuscript. It was definitely love at first read.
Oh,
I just and I mean that's just like so nice when that happens. And so there's so many things just I loved about it right when I read it. I love the mashup of like 2 evergreen themes like bedtime and alphabet. I just thought that's just definitely a winner in and of itself in terms of a concept for a book. And then I just thought the rhyme was so well executed, but also had the story built in, which is kind of very hard to do well. And loved the very bouncy rhythm and cadence that Susanna had established throughout her manuscript. It really reminded me of like the traditional ABC song that all kids learn and know. And then also it just kind of had a chicka chicka boom boom vibe.
Yes.
Without replicating that. I just kind of had that same bouncy, playful feeling to it. And then I really loved how Susanna introduced the letters one by one, kind of giving them each their own spotlight. And then after that happens, she really pushes and pulls the pacing to allow for these buildups that lead to a big sort of sometimes surprise scene that incorporate all of the letters, both visually and in the text. And then there's kind of a place where that repeats later in the book. So I always love like the element of repetition. And I think I also was really attracted, and this is perfect because Susanna already kind of mentioned this, was really attracted to what actually wasn't there in the manuscript. She just really left a lot of openness for interpretation. And I just really saw an opportunity to build in more of a visual narrative and build some character relationships into the art. And I didn't have any idea how I was going to do that, but I saw this as being a manuscript that could be enhanced and taken to another level with that addition of the visuals. And so I just thought there were so many fun opportunities to really play with those alphabet connections in the art itself. And so, yeah, I just really appreciated how she allowed for that freedom to layer on my own vision.
well, it's a beautiful collaboration.
It really is. It really is. And
Do
all
I
those
get to
things.
comment on the art?
Sure.
Yes, absolutely. Of
Because,
course.
I mean, I couldn't believe it when I got to see the art the first time. I was completely blown away. I thought like I couldn't have asked for anything better. It was exactly what I wanted because I always want things that give kids a lot to look at because you're reading to them and they're little and they're not, they're not reading the words yet. They're listening, but they're looking at the page while the adult is reading or the older sibling, whoever is reading. And for there to be so much for them to look for in the art is so bright and fun. And every single letter has, Betsy was so thoughtful in really thinking of how many things she could include that fit in naturally, but that gave kids an opportunity to see, things that began with that letter, like B, for example. I looked, it has 8 things that I see that start with B right on her. And like some obvious things like boots that any kid is going to know, but then she has on a beret. So you get the chance to teach kids, oh, well, that's a special kind of hat called a beret. And I thought it was just great.
Those details really are
Agreed.
brilliant.
Yeah.
And I
They
mean,
are.
it makes
Brilliant for B.
Brilliant for B. I didn't even do
Yeah.
that on purpose, I promise. Although now I wish I had. No, but it's perfect for going back and reading again, right? And seeing what new things you can notice. I know the stuffed animals and the cat, like there's so much to see on every page. It really is. It
Even
really
the
is
bunnies.
wonderful.
After the bunnies come
bunnies,
out
yeah.
at M, they're hiding all
cute.
around. There's
Yes.
one snorkeling in the bathtub. I mean, they're just like, they're everywhere. It's so
Yeah.
clever.
It really is.
So
It really,
much
really
fun.
is. So much fun. But it started with the words. So Susanna, we want to just scoot back to you for just a second and get a little bit more about your writing process because, like Betsy was saying, it's an alphabet book and it's in rhyme and it's wonderful, fun rhyme. You just kind of bounce along as you read, which can be so hard to do. And if it's not done right, it ruins the story, right? And so you've nailed it. Can you just give us a little bit more as to what the process was like for you writing the story?
Well, I really like writing in rhyme actually, because it's sort of like, to me, it's like doing a puzzle. You know what you want to say, but you have to think of the right way to say it so that you get the story across without a lot of extra padding.
And there are parameters, right?
Such as, what do you mean?
Well, you have to have the meter correct and you have
Right.
to like,
right. Exactly.
that's why it's like
yeah.
a puzzle. There are
Right,
parameters.
exactly. And I'm not one of those people who knows all those things like, anapests and whatever. I rhyme by ear basically. But when you're trying to come up with rhymes, a lot of times you have to think of different ways that you can say things so that you end up with a different word at the end that matches and still keep it in the meter and gives you different options. And it's also in terms of writing the story, I tried a lot of things that didn't work. I write all my manuscripts in longhand when I start. I just think better when I'm writing maybe it's because I'm old. I think better than typing. And I have like a sample page of the kind of stuff I do with crossouts and stuff like.
Okay.
But I had, initially some different ideas. Like I had, back when I had more descriptors, I had, Daredevil D in his astronaut suit tries to escape down the laundry chute. And that was a fun idea to me when I thought about it. But then when you think of like the whole group of them and how you want them all to be moving forward together toward the same goal, I didn't really want to have one of them like disappearing off in another direction. And then sorry. Then I thought, well, what else could I do, with D and E? And I had them, what did I say? D and E in their fireman suits stomp through the house in their fireman boots, which was a fun idea to me, but really had nothing to do with the story, and also doesn't start with D or E. So there were things like that came into my mind that just really didn't work, because you really want the story to be moving forward the whole time. And when I was thinking about what to put in it, I thought about all the things that you do in a bedtime routine, like, brushing your teeth and putting on your jammies and having a story. So I knew that I was going to include things like that. And, I also, in the early phases, when I was including more details, I brainstormed things that I thought kids would think were fun to have in the illustrations, but later I dropped that stuff out. And most of the manuscript actually stayed close to what I had when I finally submitted it. There was a couple things that Nancy wanted to change. One of them was in the toothbrush time when they're in the bathroom. I had a lot more in there about by letter, so that they were introduced a little more slowly. That about U and V either tickling, U and V, either tickling W, or that I had a couple different things, and she wanted to just condense that part, which made a lot of sense because it made it a little too long. And then the other thing was in the climactic scene, which I don't know if I'm supposed to be telling, although it is on Amazon, but I had used the words whacking, smacking, and the general feeling was that was maybe a little too violent. So we changed it to tossing, tumbling, which was, it's fine. That makes sense to me.
I like that. A little hint to the listeners, what they can imagine would be happening in that climactic scene. Yes.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
do you
So a
have
lot
a
of revision.
specific, a lot of revision. Do you, in your daily writing routine, do you have a specific writing schedule or helpful writing tips or habits that you'll share with our listeners?
Back in 2010, when my life was a lot different than it is now, I wrote in the morning because that's really my best time. I would sit down, I write at my kitchen table usually because it's sunny. I have an office. I never go there. So I keep things there. That's where I keep all my
storage.
Yeah. But so I would sit down at the kitchen table and write. But nowadays my schedule is a lot less dependable, I guess. I don't know. I spend a lot of time with my parents. They need a lot of things, and my daughter has a new baby, so that's where I am now. Well, she's 5 months old now, but I spend a lot of time here anyway. So that, when I'm in different places, things change. So I don't really have a regular writing schedule at this point. I write when I can. So sometimes it's in the morning, sometimes it's at 1 o'clock in the morning. It depends.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And I do other things too, because I teach my class, I write my blog, and, run the contest, stuff like that. So those things take up time when they're happening. And so I work around that stuff.
Fit it in when you can.
Yeah.
And
it's actually good advice.
I mean, really, it's true. I when my kids were little, a lot of times I used to get ideas in the middle of the night. I kept a pad and a pen by the nightlight in the bathroom so that I could get really quietly and sneak in and, write down whatever I was thinking of. I don't have to do that anymore, but
those ideas that come in the middle of the night, I feel like they can be brilliant. And if you remember to write it down, you can't. I find my brain's like, oh no, you'll remember. It's so good. You'll remember. Right. And then
I always think that, and I never do.
Yeah. Our brains can trick us that way.
I always type things into the notes in the notes on my iPhone. So when I get out of the shower, I'm like quickly trying to get those ideas down, and then I can email it to myself or tuck it in a folder of ideas to revisit later.
I actually have waterproof notes in my shower. So it's what you can actually buy Aqua Notes, and it's like waterproof paper and waterproof pencil, and you can just write.
I feel like we should link to that in the show notes. I feel like we need to find that and link to it in the show notes. I'm going to write myself a little note to make sure that happens. That's brilliant.
I often text myself. That's what I do. Like if I'm out walking the dogs or whatever, and I get an idea, I text it to myself so that I remember, because I guess I could use notes, but somehow texting is easier. So.
Nice.
And then it has the little reminder, right? Because it says you have a message. It's a little, we all need those reminders.
These tips and tricks are helpful.
I know, right? Totally.
And I think in terms of other tips and tricks, I mean, if you're stuck writing, sometimes one of the things I do is I take someone else's book that I love, preferably one I haven't done before, and I just type it out, because it gets the wheels turning, gets me in the right, writing someone else's rhythm. It's not like I'm not going to use any of that, but it just somehow primes the pump. I don't know. It sometimes can be very helpful.
I love that idea. It's a really good one.
I love that.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I've started doing that too. So it's cool to hear that you do that, Susanna, because as I'm sometimes also the author, and that part intimidates me more. So sometimes I try to solve everything all at once. And so if I can take a book I love and type it out, all I see is the words on the paper, and I can remind myself this is actually how it starts. You don't have to have everything worked out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's lovely.
That's
Well, and
wonderful.
I encourage my students to type out books too. Like when you're learning what the rhythm and pace of a picture book is, it's very helpful to just do it the way someone who's really good at it does, so that you get the feel of it. Because I think it is like a feeling, sort of. I mean, it's
It
also
is a
things that you
feeling.
learn. Yeah.
It is a feeling. And also, just even if you're not typing out and you read one of your favorite picture books and you think about, what is it that I love about this? Why do I love it? What parts of this can I infuse into my writing? It's so helpful.
Yeah, it definitely is. It sparks something, right? I know at the beginning of my writing career, I used to do that a lot. And you're right, Susanna, it's just so helpful to see how the page turns work when you're, typing it out. You can see, oh, okay, well, this is where they stopped. And then we have a page turn. To use that in your own writing and see it in someone else's is really helpful. I agree.
Yeah.
Brilliant tip. Wonderful.
And I also I do sometimes, I didn't do it this year because I was busy, but I often have done a mix and match mini writing contest on my blog in May. And that can be a really great way to get ideas if you're having trouble getting started sometimes. I just pick 3 random things. You can pick 3 words or a situation and an emotion and a character, whatever you want. But just pick 3 random things. And sometimes if you give yourself something like that, you get ideas, you start to write, and then it can totally evolve into something completely different. But it gives you a place to start if you're trying to write a story where you include an umbrella, a character named Chloe and something blue, or whatever.
I love it.
Yeah, so that can be good for getting things going sometimes too.
Love that.
Absolutely.
I love that. So, well, Betsy, we've been gushing over your art. We love it so much. There's so much to see. We can't imagine what a challenge it was to illustrate a book that has over 26 distinct characters.
Letters.
But you've done such an amazing job. There's so much energy on every page. Can you share a little bit with us about your illustration process for the book?
Yes, yeah. This was definitely I think the most challenging project I've ever worked on, just in terms of the scope. And I've never done much character development in terms of many characters in one book and repeating characters in a story before. So it definitely has pushed and pulled me in ways that felt uncomfortable at times, but I have grown so much. So I do feel like every book has a slightly different process that I work on. I kind of have to adjust my process according to the story itself. But for this book, kind of began with a call with our editor, Nancy Paulson. And at the time, at the start of the project, the art director was Cecilia Young, but she eventually transitioned out and it became Marika Tamura. I hope I'm saying her name correctly. But we just had a phone call to brainstorm kind of what maybe we all saw the vision as and see if we were on the same page. And then from there, we talked about exploring multiple options. So I think just when I read the manuscript initially, I always envisioned animated letter forms, actual letters that would have arms and legs and lots of personality. That just was sort of my natural fit.
Yeah.
As an illustrator, and just how I instantly saw it. But when in the call, when we talked about it, they encouraged me to explore some other directions as well. So I kind of, maybe creatures, kids that might sort of serve as a mascot for each letter. And so I kind of went from there and did some just concept sketches to kind of flesh out the characters, and went back to the publisher and shared them. And they ended up picking the kid direction, where each letter was represented by a kid. And so I was a little caught off guard at first because I wasn't expecting them to choose that direction. And I definitely felt more intimidated by it in terms of just what that meant with the scope and everything. But I ultimately, and it's, you know, definitely trusted their experience, and they're just really saw the reasons for them choosing that direction. And I after kind of realizing there was a few other alphabet bedtime books out there that did use the animated letter forms, I definitely felt like this was the right direction to differentiate the book and make it a little more unique. So that's how we kind of landed on that approach for the book. And then from there, I went on to just kind of working out ideas. And even if I'm illustrating the book, I really like to use word lists to brainstorm. And I kind of just, I always have too many ideas in the beginning. So it's also helps me like just sort of do a brain dump. But I began with making a bunch of different alphabet lists, like from A to Z. I do, you know, maybe animals that start from A to Z, then focus on like clothing, patterns, types of fabrics, and then maybe like accessories, and just to help me begin to think about what things in the alphabet I could connect with each letter and character, and how I might weave together a visual narrative with the alphabet in mind. So I, throughout the process, would go back to my lists and reference them and think of how I could incorporate some of these things along the way. And then also just began in the sketching process, began to think about, do I want to create some relationships between some of these letters? Z ends up being kind of, I hope this isn't like a spoiler, I don't think it really is. Z ends up being kind of like the baby of the family, and has more of a focus throughout the book in the pictures, and has a nice relationship with one of the pets. And that becomes kind of integral to how the ending is solved in the visuals. So I just kind of worked on some of how things could come together in the beginning. And then, you know, normally when I do a dummy for a book, I'm solving multiple things at the same time. But when I tried to do that, I would just get completely overwhelmed with just all of the characters. And so what I ended up doing was using the dummy more just to work out the layout and the page breaks and the pacing of the books, just work out the compositions. So I just roughen the characters, and then I worked on the character development separately. And then eventually did full-size tight sketches where I would bring those two things together and refine everything. My mind just could not handle doing all those things at one time. So with the character development, going back to those word lists helped. And then I eventually, like, you know, got my favorite 26 letters, thinking about, you know, it's a very diverse family. Mm-hmm. So I really wanted a balance of boys and girls, of different skin colors, different hair colors, different hairstyles. And so I just cut apart my sketches and began to assemble them in an order, like a puzzle. You know, like we talked about letter B earlier, B ended up being blonde with braids.
I love it.
So might be something you pick up on later.
And bangs.
And G, I wanted to be green. Bangs, yeah. She does have bangs. Does she? Yeah, she does, right?
She does.
Yeah.
You're like, I've drawn her a million times. I can't remember. Yeah.
But it was definitely a process, even through to the end when I added color, which I'll kind of go back to. But I would realize as I went along, like, oh, I think I have my characters the way I want them. And then I would get to a spread where, like, at one place they're in an order where they have letters on their shirts, mm-hmm. where they spell out the word snug. They're tucked into bed and they spell out the word snug. And that was kind of echoing a word that was in Susanna's text in that place. And then I realized, you know, I didn't like the arrangement of those characters together. Like there only ended up being one girl in the mix or something like that. Mm-hmm. And so then I'd have to go back and try to like rearrange them and see how it affected other pages. And so that part was very challenging.
So much to think about
Yeah,
in the
so much to
story.
think about. So then this wasn't necessarily like the linear process because it was a lot of back and forth, but at some point when I start thinking about the art, I would do like a few art samples for the publisher to kind of refine the style and technique. Because although we all have like a distinct style as an illustrator, it always sort of adjusts to the project that we're working on. And so
Mhm.
I would share those samples with the publisher. And then the art itself, it's ultimately assembled in Photoshop. I use a sketch as kind of a template and then block in the shapes based on my sketch in flat color. So that gives me a chance to kind of focus on color. And then I go back and add textures and patterns and details. And some of those things are hand painted that I scan
wow.
in and then paste into the shapes, the flat
Great.
shapes I've created. So I always think it ends up kind of being like a digital collage.
Yeah.
I love that.
That's a lot to think about. I mean, and this again, especially with all of the characters that you had to think of, like do this whole process for. It's
Yeah.
astounding. And what an amazing, amazing product. I mean,
Thank you.
yeah,
It's
you can
beautiful. We
see
love
the
this
hard
book.
work that went into it. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we're getting to the end
We're
of
running
our
out of
time
time.
already.
And we have
Yeah, go ahead,
we have
Kirsty.
just one last question for each of you. And we're going to start with you, Betsy. When someone reads this book, what do you hope they feel or learn?
I definitely hope that they feel represented in some way. I hope kids can see themselves in the book in some way, whether it's how the characters look or something that they love, like a stuffy that they might have, or just something that echoes their own family. Just also kind of seeing that families can look diverse and colorful and don't necessarily have to be our traditional family that we sometimes go to first in our minds. And then I hope they learn their alphabet.
I'm sure they will.
And
Fingers
just really that
crossed.
reading can be fun. And I just have great memories of, being in bed with my parents and grandmother reading me books at night. And I do the same thing with my two kids. I have a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old. And just doing that from the beginning really instills just so much and carries over into all the areas, especially when they start school. You can really see the benefits of just doing that. And it's wonderful together time.
Absolutely.
It is.
Absolutely. It's so important. Susanna, same question. When someone reads this book, what do you hope they feel or learn?
Well, I would echo what Betsy says, although I have to say that before I saw the art, I didn't know how well it would work for kids to see themselves in the book. I mean, it's really wonderful. But I hope it's fun. I hope they enjoy it, because like Betsy said, I want reading to be fun for kids. I hope that it is. It was fun for me. I love reading to my own children, to my grandchildren. It's like a special time of day. And so I hope it's fun. And I also hope that, and obviously I hope that they practice the alphabet and, learn their letters. But I also hope that the story overall gives them a feeling of the security and comfort of family, of a bedtime routine, and just feeling at home in the heart of your family, whatever conglomeration your family is, whether it's just you and one parent, or how whatever your family is. Most people don't have 25 siblings, but
maybe pets.
Hopefully it gives that feeling of being an accepted member of a family that is boisterous and joyful, and I hope that they feel good when they read it.
I love that.
I'm sure
and that
they
was
will.
perfect timing, because we literally have 60 seconds left on this recording. So,
Before Zoom kicked us out.
yeah. So
That was so
thank you so
amazing.
much. And
So wonderful to talk to you and learn from you. It's what an amazing jam-packed episode. That's great.
And we
Well, thank you
love
for
this
having
book. And the air date is November 18th. No, sorry, November 8th.
Okay, Great. Thank you so
So,
much for
Thank you so
inviting us.
much.
Yeah, thanks so much for spending some time with us and congrats on the book. It's beautiful.
It's
Thank
so
you.
beautiful.
Yes.
Thank you,
Okay,
ladies.
enjoy the rest of your day.
Okay, you too.
Bye.
Bye.